Hey folks, so we are sitting out here in front of our newly renovated barn. Actually, there is some more renovations that we need to do on this, but we thought we'd take you through some of the real costs of renovating this barn because it'll be maybe helpful for those of you who are thinking about renovating a barn and just doing a cost analysis of it. So to give you a background, this is a 40 by 60 barn. And if you recall, I think Sander took you through the barn maybe 1.5 or 2 years ago, and it was all metal siding. And I don't want to speak for you, but I'll speak for myself. I think that when I got here, I don't think I can have appreciated what we have with this barn, but we both, and Joey as well, had thought it was just aesthetically ugly. It just looked like any old barn with just metal siding. It wasn't beautiful in any kind of capacity. And I think maybe some of you would think that we're crazy that we took off the metal siding in order to put wood, but we just felt like it would fit in the landscape a lot better and go well with a lot of the renovations that we've been doing here at Flock.
Yeah, it's a very commercial building. And once I started to learn a bit more about building, I actually realized what was here. It's a relatively new building, 2010. Yeah, it's in great shape. And hopefully now that we've done this renovation, it will be in better shape and it will look better.
There's an area here that is Sander's workshop, and we're not including that in the barn renovation because that was really separate. So what we're really including is some of the exterior work. We haven't really done much to the interior, but exterior meaning like the boards, the garage doors, the regular doors, the windows, paint, fixtures, that type of stuff. And we'll take you through it, and we'll also take you through what we think we saved by doing a lot of the work ourselves. And that's another consideration that you may want to mull over for yourself as to whether you're going to hire somebody and what are the costs and benefits of doing that, or whether you're going to do the work yourself, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So I'll just go in the order of from most expensive to least expensive, so we'll just get the ouchies out of the way. And one of the things that we did not anticipate is groundwork, and that was around $10,500.
Yeah, it's a lot of stone. And this building, like after a good rain, this building would be sitting on an island. Like there would just be water sitting on it, and it wouldn't drain to the road.
Yeah, it looked like a moat essentially.
So we had to put in a good proper drain also to catch a lot of the water that would come from the hill towards the barn and kind of direct it out of the way. So we put in a really proper drain, and now after a really big rainstorm, everything's fine.
Yeah, and we've had some pretty intense rains recently, and there's no water buildup.
In the site work as well, so a lot of work that was done is that we had groundhogs underneath this concrete slab, which is not great because they'll be chewing through the vapor barrier, which prevents some of the groundwater from pushing up into the concrete slab. So after a really heavy rain, you'll see the slab is like kind of sweating, which is fine for a big barn, but like I had the guy help me put in fencing material in like an L shape so that if a groundhog or any other critter would start digging, they would hit that fence and they couldn't get back in.
Yeah, which has been really effective.
Yeah, and I could tell a couple days after that there were little burrows everywhere and they're trying to get in and they couldn't get in. It's like a reverse jail. And there's geotextile everywhere around the barn, and then we have crush and run stone on top of that. So it should stay weed free. It's compacted really well, so hopefully that will help.
Yeah, and again, we hadn't anticipated the groundwork, so that was like a big extra that we didn't know we needed. And if I could provide any information to you or advice is that, these costs come up left and right and you don't anticipate them. So at least, buffer 20-25% around what you think that you need to pay, because we're so happy that we did this. Otherwise we would just compromise the foundation of the building.
It was really the first thing that needed to happen as well, because without that, you couldn't really drive. Like we used the big lift in order to install a lot of these boards, and without a proper like crush and run foundation around the
That's
barn.
true.
You couldn't really, you'd be driving in the
sinking in.
mud.
Yeah.
Because the machine is really heavy.
Yeah.
Oh, another thing that the geotextile fabric does, it prevents divots from forming. So it kind of spreads out the weight. So that was another thing. Yeah, it was a crucial step, but it's very expensive because you have machinery involved, operators, and stone, a lot of stone.
Yeah, a lot
So,
of stone. I
lot
can't
of
remember
trucks.
how much we brought in, maybe 4 or 5 trucks. And Matt,
I think more than that.
Maybe, yeah. Matt, who lives up the street, 21 years old, he was just incredible with the machinery and giving us advice, giving us solid advice on what we needed to do. And his advice was great because it's been working. So the next one on the list is, if you could see behind us, garage doors. So can you tell folks what we did with that? Because that was around $7,000.
Yeah, so we inherited these doors because these doors were already here. However, they were slightly dented here and there due to my fault. And they...
How many do we have?
There's 5 garage doors total when we started. One was in my wood shop, and I replaced that one with a swing door so that it could be insulated. I would say a 10 by 10 like insulated garage door was going to cost somewhere in that same price, like $7,000 to $8,000.
Yeah,
so
$8,000 I think is what the quote you got for one insulated door.
And I was like, I'll just build my own. I'll just basically build a wall section and then put hinges on it and then just make it swing open. And that way I can get rid of that garage door track that's on the ceiling, which is not very aesthetic. But for the rest of the 4 doors, they were in decent shape. So we decided to keep them and just give them a little makeover by pressure washing them and then painting them yellow, which was quite a bold move. And if we didn't have something like Photoshop to kind of figure out what that would look like first, I'd be a little hesitant to like push through with that. But it looks great in the end. And the dented panels, we swapped out for a panel with windows. So
yeah,
we basically got a brand new door, but for a lot less money than it would have cost if we had completely renovated it.
And we sort of painted them ourselves, more or less. Like we hired Bob to come and paint them, and he gave us a really good price. But we were working with him. You really needed 3 people to handle these doors efficiently.
It was great to have a system because there's a lot of panels when they're all down, and it's just 2 people can carry a panel. The other person can start painting the one that was put there previously. So you can kind of like figure out an efficient system. It goes pretty fast.
Yeah. Now, part of the 7K that Sander didn't mention is that this is one of the larger doors. The doors on the west side, which we still have to do as of this video, still need to go in, but they're not insulated. The only insulated door is Sander's workshop. And then we're getting windows on each side, and then we have one that's now automated, and then you had a lift.
Yeah. So this door is like 14 feet high, and there's a door on the other side that's 12 feet. And the tracks, when the door's open, that door would just be a little lower than the 14 feet one, which would prevent us from really getting all the height we could possibly can in that barn. So we asked the garage door company to actually raise the track up so that we get all that headroom, and that way, we have just more space and it looks more symmetric, and it's just better that way.
We had our friends earlier in the year, or earlier like last year, Dean come in and build a tiny house in here, and that was a really close call.
It was
on that
close,
door.
and you had to actually take apart one side of the track
right.
in order to fit this thing in there.
Yep.
And now that won't be a problem anymore.
So that was 7K, and like as Sander said, we just cleaned the doors, painted them, and got 1 extra new panel so that we have windows. And the windows look great in there now. The amount of light that comes into the barn, because the barn was essentially just like a Monopoly piece with like almost no windows. No windows, right?
No windows.
No windows. So it was just a box.
Yeah, it was just a really cold box, especially in the winter. It'd just be dark in there.
Yeah.
And it's got those big lights
those
overhead
fluorescent lights.
that kind of turn green, and like everything looks kind of green in there and off. Like the colors are slightly off. It's just kind of weird. So now it looks a lot better.
It looks a lot better.
We have the natural wood on the inside instead
and
of
a lot
the
more
metal.
usable.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So the next one on the list is the wood siding, which was $6,000, and probably would have been more. but we did a lot of labor of planing it ourselves, and that's kind of one of our errors. But that was one of the things that we now, in hindsight, would have paid for. You want to share about that?
Yeah, so we bought this wood about 1.5 years ago because we wanted to make sure that it dried really well. And in that time, we didn't really know quite yet how we wanted to treat the wood or what kind of effect we wanted. We ended up going with the reverse board and batten, which means that instead of putting the batten on the outside to cover the gap between the boards, we put the batten on the inside and then put the boards to cover the larger gap between the battens. So that way it becomes really easy to actually repair a board if we ever need to, because you could just take it off the wall and put another one up. And on the inside, you'll get a board and batten look, which looks really nice.
Oh, and also with the boards, with the width, you get the full width of the board.
Yeah, that was another benefit.
These are 16-foot boards that are 12 inches wide. If you put the batten over the top of the board,
yeah, you hide some of the wood.
You're going to hide some of the wood. It's going to look more like 10 inches. And on a 40x60 barn, you want to get as much width as possible.
And see, we did the meadow house over there with a 10-inch wide board, which is more like 9 1/4 or whatever. But this ended up being a 12-inch, so that it's proportionally, this building's a lot bigger, so we wanted to make sure that the siding also looks bigger on that barn versus a smaller building right next to it.
Yeah, so that was important. The planing, the reason why I said we would have paid for the planing is...
Oh yeah, that's what you were talking about.
Yeah.
So because we didn't know what to do with it, we had to plane, like if we just took the rough boards and we just put the boards and batten against each other, there would just be this small gap in between each board because none of them were perfectly flat.
Yeah, they were all different widths as well.
We had to, first of all, plane one side. We wanted to keep it rough looking on the outside. So plane one side and then plane all the battens on both sides and then cut all the boards to width. Because one thing that I figured out on the meadow house is that if you order boards and you let them dry, one side of the board could be like 10 inches and the other side could be 9.5.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it tapers down. So we didn't want to have that issue here. I wanted to have nice, clean, straight lines as the building is kind of a modern aesthetic. So I made sure that we pushed it through the table saw and everything was the same width.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of preparation work. And luckily my parents were in town and my dad actually helped out a lot, helping probably for like 3 weeks.
I think 3 weeks.
Were tough days.
And they were like 8 to 10 hour days.
Yeah, because
on this tiny little planer.
Yeah, we don't have a big industrial planer, so I got kind of like a homeowner planer, and we pushed all this wood through it like multiple times, and that thing.
One board you had to go through like maybe 6 or 7 times.
Yeah, each board will have. Yeah, in order to get it to a point where it was smooth on one side. And yeah, it was rough because, we also, on the sides, we wanted to create that rough sawn look. So I took one of the saw blade teeth and I kind of dented it or, moved it so that it would be a little rough and dull.
Yeah.
So just pushing all these boards through a rough saw, it was just a lot of work and it was really hot. But we got it all done, and I'd feel really sick to my stomach if we didn't go through some of those steps. And I'm after that attention to detail, and if we can't get that, then it's not worth doing it for me. So it had to be done. But I'm glad the result's here, because otherwise that would have been sad.
And just put a pin in that on what Sander's saying, because it's pretty much near impossible to get this level of detail if you're hiring a contractor. That's part of the reason why we came to the conclusion that we would be doing a lot of the work ourselves, because that attention to detail is usually lost in the wind. Even if you're hiring a really good contractor.
Yeah, or it's just a lot of work. It doesn't make sense. Like, you should have ordered it that way.
Right.
Would be the response. But so.
Yeah, so I don't think a lot of people would have put up with us, but we'll return back to that. But the next one on the list is something that we don't have up on this barn yet. It's coming, I think, in next month in October. Yeah. So that would be our gutters and snow guards, and that's around $4,000, right?
Yeah. I got multiple quotes, and it was roughly the same price, so I'm just like, yep. And those are going to be continuous one piece, 60 foot, and then a downspout on each side, so that all the water that falls on the roof, which is quite a lot, will just get sent out straight to the drain, and it won't even fall on the ground. And in the winter, when the snow falls on the roof, sometimes it starts to slide, and all of a sudden this huge chunk of ice just falls down 16 feet.
Yeah.
And I might just be like getting out the door and just like clunk, get that big piece of ice.
I laugh, but people have died that way, so
I
yeah,
bet.
you gotta be careful.
I bet. And sometimes they'll hang on for a while, and you'll see these big curls coming off the edge. It's almost like a wave, upside down wave.
Or big icicles too.
Yeah, or big
Yeah.
icicles.
Yeah.
So, you know, we're getting some snow guards on there as well so that the snow can kind of like take its time and melt, and it won't fall on this area, which helps again with better drainage.
Yeah, and this barn has never had snow guards or gutters, and that's part of the reason why all the water would like rush and basically take away all the stone. So
Yeah, it creates this drip line as well.
Yeah,
here in
terrible drip
front.
line,
It
so-
eats away at the concrete
Yeah.
that's like right next to it. Splatters up against the building, which degrades the paint and the stain. And so
it's going to be better for long-term solutions. All right, next two are around $3,000, and one is the hardware. And this is something that you have noted here, not something to save on. What do you
Yeah.
mean by that?
So something that you might not see directly is that there's a lot of freaking screws in this building, and just all kinds of things like that. Like what else? Screws.
I mean,
What else hardware-wise?
hinges,
Oh,
we
yeah,
have
hinges,
door handles, knobs,
all that
like
kind of
things like that,
stuff.
yeah.
And you know, when we're talking about screws, so we went with screws for the boards. It could have gone with nails. Nails are generally better when wood wants to move because the nail is flexible and it can kind of move with it. The screws are better at holding the board tight to the wall, and that's what I wanted. I wanted to make sure that these boards would really suck down tight against the barn so that we would get a good seal between the battens and the boards so that there's not any rain and wind and insects that are being able to get in there. So yeah, the screws, that was a lot of work putting all those screws in, and I don't want to have to replace those ever or pull them out and have them break on me while I'm... So I wrote down don't save on this because you want to get the best possible screw you can find to put into these boards, because otherwise you're going to be in trouble in the future.
Yeah. All right, the next one on the list is something that we have not contended with yet, but we have to do it pretty soon, is lights. And we have around $3,000 allocated for that as well, give or take. That means lights in the exterior and also lights on the interior side as well.
And that does not involve hire an electrician to come out and install those, I believe. I'm gonna see how much I can install, but yeah, I think we'll spend around that much money on just lights because there's just so much of it if you really think about it. Like maybe above each door, a little light.
And lights make a difference too, just like the look of them, because Sandra was saying before, like the current overhead lights that we have are just like green, and when you turn them on, they go dink, 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 and they rattle. And it just is not nice, and it's not nice to be in the barn. And if we start to use this barn for events, like basically we want to have a barn that is multi-purpose, multifunctional, and if we ever want to do events in it, we will be able to. If you just want to use it as a workshop or build tiny houses or what have you, we want to have that opportunity to do that. So we're willing to spend a little bit up front to make it look nice and functional.
Yeah, and LEDs are the way to go these days, so that's what we're hoping to put in. They're more energy efficient, and the lights that are in there now are probably, they use a lot of energy, so ideally we use LEDs.
Next one is paint and stain, and this barn is stained, and the doors are painted, I guess, but we spent around $2,500 on stain and paint.
Just stain and paint.
Yeah.
And we went with Benjamin Moore Woodlux, I think it's called now. It used to be Arbor Code. And we went with a solid stain because stains, and the reason why we went with a stain instead of paint is because a stain, it soaks deeper into the wood instead of create a film on top of the wood. So it's easier to maintain over time. And the reason why we went with a solid stain versus a transparent stain, you have different kinds of transparencies, like semi-transparent or...
And we were going to go with semi-transparent for...
We like to see the wood grain.
Yeah.
But the downside is then if you do a transparent stain, now you're going to have to redo it
more often. And
as you redo it more often, the stain becomes less and less transparent. And I think we saw that on our house up there, where every time it got stained, it just kind of got a little weirder and just multiple layers and different colors, and it just ends up being this weird soup. And This stain will hopefully last a good 5 to 8 years. I don't know.
I mean,
The
we only
south
put one
side-
layer on it.
Yeah, we put one coat on because I heard it's best to put one coat on for now, and then in the spring, after a good winter, put the second coat on. Just to give the first coat a lot of time to really like establish. And the reason why I went with a solid stain as well, like the south side will probably degrade a lot faster than the north side. So we might need to end up putting a coat on the south side here faster than we would have to put a coat on the other sides. But you know, we wanted to do a solid stain because it was easier on the maintenance. And as you can see, some of the boards are right at the ground there. So if we have snow that's sitting up against it, we want to make sure that that wood is well protected and it's not just gonna rot easily down there. All the end grains are stained really well too.
Oh yeah,
with
that's
two
right.
coats.
A lot of
Like,
details
there's a lot of details to
that
make
maybe
sure
some
that-
contractors would have never done.
Yeah, well, I
probably.
think that would be a requirement, but I know for sure now that every end grain that's on that barn, it has two
Right.
coats of stain on it, and water's gonna have a harder time getting in there.
One of the other things that we did that maybe contractors wouldn't do is that we created a little template to put the screws in exactly the same line across all the boards. And I feel like that's not something people
Right.
would normally do.
You can't really see it from this distance.
No.
But when you walk up close, it's just nice to see a line of screws instead of just being all over the place.
All over the place.
And it's also more consistent. Like if you were to put one too close to the edge, you might split the edge in, or the board might shrink and it do something weird. So I wanted to make sure you have enough like beef on the side of the board just to make sure it doesn't crack and stuff like that.
The next one on the list is doors, and that was $1K. And how many doors do we have on here? Man doors, I guess now.
Well, we have a lot. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's a lot of doors.
Yeah, and there's
6,
some on the
7,
inside.
8, 9.
Yeah.
Almost 9 to 10 doors, I think, on this
So
entire
you might
building.
be asking yourself, how did you
That's like $100 per
pay
door.
$1,000 for 9 doors? And you could share
Well, we had a lot of leftover doors. So
from the upper house,
Yes.
common house.
So the house up there, we swapped out the doors and the windows because they were about 30 years old. They were wooden windows, and the seal on some of them were broken. Like you could see the door here. There's actually no condensation on it right now, but there will be
yeah, it's clear.
condensation on the inside of the glass. So you try to wipe it off on both sides and you can't. So the seals are broken and they're less energy efficient and they're wood, so they're not as good as something like fiberglass with foam in it. Not as energy efficient. So we swapped doors on that house and I just repainted them and reused them here. And we have beautiful doors and windows on this
They
bar now.
look brand
that would have
new.
costed thousands of dollars to make.
Yeah.
All made out of wood,
We
cedar.
we painted them obviously that specific yellow that we have here. It's kind of like it's called Mayan gold. It looks like a marigold color, but it's called Mayan gold. They really give a fresh look, but we also costed out when we went to Home Depot or Lowe's, I can't remember.
Yeah.
You want to share?
I think we saved about $700 off our price of our door by painting it ourselves.
Yeah, each door that
Yeah.
was new.
So when you buy a door, you can pick a couple colors, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're gonna have like the exact yellow that you want.
Mm-hmm.
So we opted to just get, the standard door, not paint it, and that would save you a lot of money.
Yeah, and we actually did a bicolor door, so a different color on the inside versus the outside,
Which would be really hard to order as well.
yeah, I
And
don't think it'd be
takes-
possible.
It could take a lot of time to paint a door as well. So it's, you gotta weigh do you want to spend the time? Do you have the equipment to do it? Because I bought a paint sprayer, and that has saved me a lot of money in a lot of places because I've used that paint sprayer in a lot of projects.
And we actually have not included that cost of the paint sprayer in here, so because we already had
Those are
the
just
equipment.
the tools.
But
It's like another benefit from when you do all the work yourself. You're gonna end up with a lot of leftover materials.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna be able to have all the leftover tools that you use in order to put it together. So that's kind of like a side benefit of we hired. So in order to paint the barn doors, we had a different sprayer because they're just so big. But it's like an airless sprayer. I don't want to buy one of those.
yeah, more
But,
expensive, and it has a wider spray.
Yeah, it goes faster. I mean, we hired Bob to help us paint it, but we didn't, at the end, get to keep the paint sprayer,
sprayer,
so,
yeah.
it sucks. But
we talked about the doors, but also the windows were free because the same deal. We took out all the windows that were in the common house. We got triple pane up there, tilt and turn. We paid a pretty penny for that up there, but these were like basically cedar windows that were
and they're
custom
good enough
made.
for a wood shop.
Yeah, they're perfect.
It's not going to be 70 in there in the winter. It's going to be more like 60 or 55. So who cares? And we have a lot of windows left, so you could potentially use some of them in a future greenhouse.
Which is, you know, on the list of things to do on this barn, tack onto this barn, but not now. The other thing that was free, thank you, Pat and Penny, our neighbors, which would have cost around $3,000 a month, was the lift, and that was indispensable.
Yes. I don't think I could have done this project without having this lift.
At least safely.
So I'd be on ladders with like super heavy boards.
Yeah.
And it would be so annoying. Like even just painting, like once you walk up to the building, you realize how tall it is. You're like, how am I gonna get up to there? Especially like where the gable ends are in the top corner there. And then painting everything, you can't do it on a ladder.
Mm-hmm.
So having a lift like that is very crucial to finishing this project. Yeah, our neighbors just so happened to have one, and they let us borrow it for like 2 months.
2 months. Well,
it's insane.
We have to say we sent them a big thank you, and then we offered the metal that we took off this barn, which we could have sold because it was in perfectly fine condition, and we're giving it to them because they're actually putting up a new building themselves, and we talked to them about it, and I think that was a nice gift. So, you know, give and receive. Our neighbor's been really helpful, but it just goes to show you that every little bit helps in order to save on cost. And so, drum roll, the total cost of this renovation for what we have so far is $37,000.
Yeah.
And I think we had it placed around maybe $25,000, but we weren't really thinking through with the groundwork.
Was a big surprise. And so I didn't think we thought we were going to spend that much on it. But I think what we got is we got twice as much value in this sitting here than by doing a lot of the work ourselves.
Well, and that's the next one. So Sonder put in 480 hours and I put 120 hours into this barn. And, you know, we hired a smattering of people here and there, like Bob to do the painting, Matt to do the groundwork. But we have Sonder at $65 an hour because for him, that would be the equivalent of hiring somebody who is like very detail-oriented, a very detail-oriented carpenter around here. And we track our hours, and we talk about that in other episodes, so you could refer to those. But we track our hours, and we give a price per what our hourly rate would be so that it's realistic, so we know what we're saving. I put in 120 hours, I'd be more like a carpenter's assistant, and we have us at $30 an hour. So
and that actually doesn't include like my dad helping me out.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It doesn't include, it's just some of the things. I track my hours, but it's a bit rough.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like you're trying to figure out how much money you would have saved. So you're trying to figure out like how much would it cost me to hire someone to do this, and then I can kind of figure out how much I saved.
Yeah, so it's about $30,000 to $35,000 probably roughly in labor. So if we were to hire this out, we would have spent another 30, probably equivalent to 37,000. We would have doubled it.
Yeah, it would have doubled it. That's what I'm saying. Like I think we have double the amount of value sitting here.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
But it's also a choice, right? Because you could decide, well, do I just work for a couple months and then make a lot of money and then spend that money on hiring someone else to do it? You know, you'd have to oversee the project maybe a little bit, or you're paying someone else to oversee the project. So it's just like, which route do you want to go? Do you want to do it yourself and keep all the materials and the tools afterwards and get all the experience and the knowledge? Because that's another thing I was thinking about. It's like I know how to do my job and I can just do it to make money, but this is something new for me. It's something I want to learn more about and want to get experience with. So it's like after this, I've invested in myself to learn new skills and to be able to do stuff. And now I can confidently say that I could do something like this for someone else or for myself within a certain budget and time frame. So
And there's a downside of not project managing or, you know, having somebody else build this while you're at work, is they could be cutting corners and you just would never know. They could maybe not put the lick of stain on the end grains, or they might put in screws that are kind of wavy as opposed to in a straight line, and you wouldn't be able to get that back. So I think that those are a lot of the challenges that we didn't, that we thought we'd take on ourselves for that.
There's a lot of details in this because, like, for example, on the west side of the building, we know that that's a side that's going to be seen a lot. So we actually went through a lot of the boards to select the good ones and to make sure that the nice boards are on that side.
Yeah, knowing that we were going to have a greenhouse here, we put like the less nice
the
boards
leftovers
out here.
can go on this wall, which we're filming now, but like, you know, eventually it will be covered up, so it's less important. So being able to do that, you know, you could probably find someone and hire someone that has that attention to detail, but then again, for what price and to what extent are they gonna care about a building that you might care more about? And I care a lot about the projects that I work on. Sometimes I can care more about a project than my client does in my original work. So I gotta be careful with that too. But on my own projects, I can go as long as I want on it until it drives me crazy, so.
Yeah, so in conclusion, $37,000 to do the basic renovations to make a former metal barn with no doors and windows look like this. And we saved probably somewhere between $40,000 to $45,000 in free equipment and doing it ourselves. And always keep in mind that your labor is worth something, so that's why we always track our labor and kind of figure that out. But yeah, I mean, I'm proud of the work we did. I mean, you're more psyched to kind of learn these skills. Maybe I'm a little less so, but I feel accomplished now, and I have a lot of pride in what we've done here. And you know, we've started to renovate a lot of buildings. This is probably the one building that I've worked the most on. It's only a 1/4 of what you've put in, but
you just need more hands at some point.
Absolutely.
So it's a lot of work.
16-foot boards, you need 2 people on it, at least.
And is this better than a metal building? I don't know. You see some barns around here that are still standing, like how many years? And that's all hemlock wood too.
Yeah.
And now we're staining it. There's a building down the road here that has never been stained. It's all hemlock and it's still in good shape. And that's been there for 60 years, I think. And they just recently painted it, stained it.
Yeah.
And that's probably gonna last another.
Yeah, as long as it has a really good roof on it. And we probably will keep this roof for another 10, 15 years. Maybe
yeah, we got bigger plans for like cupolas, different roof,
some
you gotta take it bit by bit.
Yeah, we still haven't done the trellis on this side, so there's gonna be more to come with this barn, so stay tuned. But we thought we'd kind of pause it here and give you an estimate of this barn renovation. And so that way, you know, like I said, if you're doing a barn in your neck of the woods, you'll get a sense of what it actually costs. If we had to build this from scratch, I mean, your guess is as good as mine, maybe somewhere between $350,000 and $500,000 to get this thing built.
In 2010, they probably paid somewhere around $300 to $400 for it. But nowadays, I mean, this is incredible. It's incredible. I think it would be $500,000 barn because of they have LVL beams, which are glue laminated, really strong beams. The trusses are the biggest trusses you can buy. They have a second floor in them. They're oversized.
Concrete.
There's concrete. There's 6 inches concrete here where the garage doors are to be able to handle heavy traffic or a heavy tiny house that someone's building. So there's just, I mean, it's priceless. These things, you know, they just go up in cost over time.
Yeah.
And what's here, we hope to improve and to invest more into to be able to, you know, make that last longer. And I think like some of the philosophy I have here as well is that if you want something to last, you have to make it beautiful, because then there will always hopefully be someone in the future who will want to take care of the building and not just tear it down.
Yeah.
So
like us, we came here and we really appreciated the work that went into this place, both in the landscape and in the renovation in some cases. We sneered a little bit in some of the buildings, but once we realized, you know, maybe it wasn't up to our aesthetic disposition, but the bones have been really good in these buildings.
Yeah, well, this
more or
whole
less.
area down here we didn't want to have anything to do with it, but when we purchased the property, because it was just vinyl siding, broken, dirty, ugly colors, it felt commercial. And look at it now. We have gardens, we have different kinds of plants. It feels much more like home-like. You want to spend much more time down here, and this is kind of the epicenter of where we build a lot of stuff.
I like
wood shop,
epicenter.
the epicenter.
The epicenter, yeah.
This is where you.
This is where we greet our
this is
community
where
that
we-
comes in.
There's where we build. It's like kind of near the road, so it's what people see. So it's
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, and we'll have more videos on this barn, but also the renovations and the landscaping that we're doing here. And we'll see you in the next video. Bye.